Yo, what's up everyone, Kyrios here, and today I want to go over an Asta build or a couple builds and tell you how you're really playing Asta wrong. Now, if you've seen any of my live streams, I've been completely dominating with her, and I build her slightly different than a lot of other people, and I'm going to explain why I build her differently with a little bit of math. It's napkin math, so bear with me there. But if you guys can't hit that like and subscribe, I think you're going to like this video. Hit the chapters down below. Let's get started. So let's just go ahead and start talking about the build that I like to run, and then let's prove a couple things here, right? Shall we? So the first thing I like to do is the build I like to run is the stats you see on screen. This is a very balanced build where I've got a decent amount of attack, I've got some really nice defense, I've got some nice HP, and then I've got some insane speed. Now, I'd love to get that speed to 150, and we'll explain why you really want to run speed on Asta. So I'm going to go shift over to my relics, and you're going to see that I'm actually using the Musketeer set and the Fleet of the Ageless, mainly because she's a support. She's really not designed to do damage. Yes, we'll talk about break effect here in a second, but remember, break effect has no effect on the amount of toughness shredding you can do on the shield. It's only the damage that happens at the time of shield shatter, which is a very tricky stat to work with, considering then you have to land the actual hit with Asta, which means that none of your other characters can run it as well. So not my favorite stat in the world. As a substat, it's fine, but you can see in the boots I run speed, and we did get a really nice break effect on that substat, and that's what you're kind of looking for, is tank stats and break effect on that substat. Now, why speed? Let's talk about speed real quick. Now, before we get into all this mumble jumbo where we actually tested out a lot of the damage, let's talk about speed breakdown, because I get a lot of questions in stream on how speed works. So one thing I want to talk about is I'm sure I'm showing some images on screen where I've been able to go 2 or 3 times before a boss can go. If we assume a boss's speed is at 100 and we assume a character's speed is at 100, that means that every single time there's a turn, the boss goes once, ideally, and your character goes once, right? So you get 1 attack per time. Now, if we're taking that into consideration, over 10 turns, the boss gets 10 turns over 10 turns, right? And then if Asta's speed is 100, so you're not building speed, she effectively gets 1 turn with every turn. Yes, I know her ultimate gives speed. We're not going to work that into the equation. I could, but we don't have to. So what we're going to assume here is that you actually are only going to get an ultimate every 4 turns, with her being a base speed as well. This is not taking into account energy recharge, which you should be running energy recharge, by the way. We'll talk about that in a second. But the more speed you get, the more turns you get. So you can see if we bump that base speed up to 150, that means every 3rd turn, effectively going into the 4th turn, you get an extra turn because you're lapping the boss. So you're going that much faster. So if this was 100, 100, 100, 100, it takes 400 points of movement to go 4 turns, but you're going to hit 400 points of movements on turn just shortly after turn 3. Or as turn 3 happens. So what does that mean? That means you're going to generate a lot more energy. You're going to be able to ultimate a lot more. You can even see right now that I can ultimate faster and more often than a slower Asta, and that's actually really good because then you're making your team move, as of right now, 33% better, meaning they're going to do a lot more damage because they get more turns or they get a lot more usability. So going back to the build that I like to do, I like to run her tanky. I like to run defense on her chest piece. I like to run HP. I'm actually going to switch this. I don't have another HP one, right? I actually like to run HP. You can run fire damage. It is going to increase the dots. That's completely up to you, but I like to run HP as well. And then the other one I like to run is energy recharge. Now, ideally, you find this in a gold one, so you can get 20% energy recharge, which would push that ultimate up to effectively every 3rd turn. So that would actually make it so you could almost ultimate like this. Let's see, you would do and it's something like that. It'd be very awkward, but you can get almost 4 ultimates there, which would be absolutely crazy. So energy recharge is absolutely amazing. And then I like to run break effect on her substat because that's going to make her a lot better. Now, the reason I'm running this set, yes, it's going to give her a little bit more damage, and we'll talk about that damage here in a second, but it's going to give her that base speed and an extra 6% speed. But you're probably like, oh man, an extra 6%. But that's effectively 6 points of speed, or a little bit better than that as you get more and more speed. Now, ideally, you want to run speed. You want to land substats of speed all the time. I ran 4 on this one, but you want to run a substat on every single piece. So over time, you'll probably replace a lot of these pieces as you find a better substat. But the thing I love about her is that you will not get one shot as a tanky Asta. You can actually take hits to the face. You can see on screen that 𝙀𝙓𝙋𝘼𝙉 is just like really dominating into my Asta right now, and she's not even phased. She did take damage, but she's not going to die. And since Asta's a support, that's where she's at. So speaking of that, before we get to the numbers, let's talk about what light cone you want to run on her. So if we're going to the light cones, I actually really like to run, if you did get this, 𝙀𝙓𝙋𝘼𝙉𝘍. Now this one's a little finicky because the next ally taking an action gets 30% more damage, which your healer might go after her, and so you might lose a lot of capability there. But what I do like is that you get 10% regeneration rate, and you get that extra free skill point. And since depending on what route you want to go, she might be skill point hungry. This is why I like building her tanky as well, and that is very good. Now the other one I like to run is actually Carve the Moon, because she's a support. I mean, 20% attack every single time you take a turn, or 12% energy recharge, or 24% crit damage. This is all amazing. These stats right here are absolutely amazing. You can get this from the battle pass, one of my favorite relics of all time. Now you can run Dance Dance Dance, and it will push the actions of your teammates forward by 24%, and this is very viable also on a speedy Asta. But honestly, if I was to run a very speedy Asta, I would probably run meshing cogs in that point, where I can generate even more ultimate energy and maybe even pump out 5 ultimates in 10 turns. This is a little use casey, but I do enjoy this one as well. And you get some better stats. All right, so let's bust into a very convoluted spreadsheet here. I apologize in advance. So what we did is I actually tested a bunch of different gear against some enemies, just some baseline enemies. Now this isn't the best. Every enemy has their own resistances, their own issues, and there's a bunch of other dynamics that I do not take into account here. But from as a top level, we can test a few things. So one, on that Musketeer set, on the set that I currently run today, right, we're assuming that every 4th turn we're going against a boss that you're going to hit that break damage. And that's assuming you land the break damage on the actual break. Once again, remember, read my lips. Break effect has nothing to do with how fast you can take down shields. Remember that. It's break efficiency. So it's only at the time of breaking. So there's 2 stats I want to throw here. So on my current gear, you can see I do about 5,900 damage, but that's mainly because we're speed build. I did take an extra turn in there, so you could remove this extra 443 because there is an extra turn there. So if I was to remove that, right, that would update to 5,400. But you can see here with us just auto attacking and skilling, and auto attacking and ultimating, we do about 5,900 damage with our burn as well. So and that's assuming you keep the burn consistent, which you probably will. Now if you don't break, we do about 5,700 damage. So remember, if you do not land the actual break, you lose a ton of your potential. But what's nice is that you get a 4-point skill generation by doing auto attacks, which, speaking of that, you should always be doing a Q after the ultimate. And the reason why that is because if you go into Asta's Eidolons, assuming you get to E2, which you will get to E2 at some point, right? After using the ultimate, Asta's stacks will not be reduced by the next turn. And then once you eventually get her this E6, which is really good, charging stacks won't be lost every turn, which is reduced by 1. So you're not going to want to skill every single turn once you get her to E2, especially after the ultimate, because you want her to skill differential, not in the negative. And quickly, because why not, I should probably throw this in there. Speaking of her traces as well, you really don't need to level too many of her traces. Level her ultimate as high as possible. You don't have to level the skill up if you don't want to. And then you want to level up her talent as much as possible because she's there for additional damage support. You don't have to level anything else. Now, I would get her basic attack burns an enemy for 3 turns. Remember that this does not stack, but it does do some additional damage, which is nice based off attack. And I would not get the increases fire damage by 18% until we have another all-star fire unit, which we don't really have right now. And then what I would do is at Ascension 6, definitely grab this, where it increases her defense by each charging stack. So that's technically 6 times 5, which, if my math is correct, 30% additional defense, which makes her even tanky. And this is what I'm saying. Even the game is telling you that you want to build her tanky. Like, you usually follow what the game is trying to tell you in the traces. Now, if we were to do the same gear where I just use skill every single turn, obviously we have a negative 4-point skill generation, which is not good if you're running 𝙀𝙓 and a bunch of other, a bunch of, greedy DPS like 𝙀𝙓. But we can take that same number. We're actually doing less damage, and our break damage is actually less, funny enough, just because we do less overall damage. And you can see the break numbers are the same, 1571 and 1159. Now, if we were to shoot our break effect up to like 70% from 30%, we do lose a lot of attack because we have to change it. We're also no longer speedy anymore either, because it's hard to balance that with trying to get that. But you could boost your break effect. So what you can see here is that that break effect did go up. You can see about 500 points increase in break effect and increase in break effect burn. Now, if you land that on the 4th turn like normal, you're doing about 4,800 damage, which is great. But if you miss that break, look at this. You are losing so much damage. So much damage. Now, this is with auto attacks, so that's assuming skill point generation. Now, you do want to skill some. So remember, you're not going to hit Q every single time because you do want to charge your ultimate. But you can see here when we do skills to break, where we do skill damage every single turn, right? You can see that damage is higher, but the skill break is still really bad. So there's a really big differential when you miss that skill break damage. And the same thing happens when we build a little bit control, where we build a little break effect, we raise that attack from 1300 to 1500, and we're still slower, so we get better damage across the board. But we still come into the same problem where if you miss the break, you're just out of luck. You're just completely out of luck. So that's why I think you should only be getting it through substats, and you should be focusing on keeping her tanky, because if she's dead, she's not going to help your team, and you should build her as fast as humanly possible. So that's all I really got. You can build her break effect. I'm just not sold on it. There's just so many things at play. Break effect really makes it so she's only really good on firefights, which once again, she's really the best on firefights 100%. But if I was to bring her for more than just firefights and bring her to speed up my 𝙀𝙓, speed up my 𝙀𝙓, speed up my entire team so I could take more turns before every single enemy and every single boss, I would build her tanky, because I just don't want to heal her, right? Like, that's the biggest problem, right? If you have to heal her, you're going to be taking away healing that you could potentially do on your main DPS, because your main DPS is probably going to be very squishy, right? And is going to cause you to have to use your Natasha to actually heal your main DPS. If that happens, you don't want to be healing other people. So that's why I think Asta tanky speedy is the best build out there. Let me know in the comments down below if this helped you out. Ask any questions, I'll try and answer them. I do appreciate you guys. Take it easy, and fist bump from me to you.